Hmm.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the live stream. We are in it. This is the 2024 presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President, 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I'm Ryder, as always, and I am here with my colleague, Thinker. Thinker, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Presidential elections for the last few years have historically been a bit rough. So
You know what?
going into this,
Says
I'm
it all.
cautiously optimistic, though. So
Yeah,
that's
I get that.
I think about as good as I can be at this point.
Yeah, I get it. I will say though, in terms of style, you were rocking a fedora and a vest.
I am. I know
Is that like
I know fedoras get a lot of hate, but I don't know.
Is that like a Tommy
I have a
Bahama
weird
shirt
shaped
too?
head, and fedoras seem to be the
Yeah.
only thing that work for it.
Have you ever seen? Not to like, we'll get into the debate stuff soon, but have you ever seen like people who they wear a hat for their entire life and you see them take it off and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, I have. I'm trying to think of an example. I'm sure that I know somebody that I had that experience with. So,
Yeah, or like a massively tall forehead or anything. All right, so we are in it. This is again the 2024 presidential election or debate live stream. We have a whole bunch of things that we need to get through. This is the pre-debate talk, as it says down below. Punk Rock Pollyanna says, let's see if I can pull that up. We got our first, speaking of which, we got our first bingo list up. We got 2025, trillions, Cali, tariffs, institutions, justice, GDP, loans, phony, and ICE. Beautiful. So to that point, for everybody else listening, and I will say this multiple times before till about 9:10, you have until about 9:10. There is a bingo list in the description of this live chat. If you guys are watching, submit 10 out of those 20 terms and then post them in the channel in the comments. The first person who gets all 10 said by either candidate or the moderators gets a free piece of merch, any piece of merch from the Writers Reacts merch store. And I can show that to you a little bit right now. We have a whole bunch of things on here. There's like, what do we got? There's new stuff every single day. If you guys follow the channel, and I really hope you do, yeah, we have shirts.
Check this stuff out.
I know we have shirts, we have bags, we have stickers, we have magnets, whole bunch of stuff. Art in progress. If you're an artist, you absolutely know what this means. You are just 99.9, but you are a 10th of percent away from repainting the Sistine Chapel or whatever you do. Now.
I might have to get that for my fiance, who's an artist.
Yeah, your fiance is a major master artist. If you ever we'll post that stuff in the description later on. So now that's all well and good, but we are here to talk about
ball caps.
Yeah, they're really nice. We are here to talk about, and during the Vibe Thinker, keep bringing the fits. Did you see that? Oh wait, no, you didn't, of course.
What was that?
Punk Rock Pollyanna says, enjoying the Vibe Thinker. Keep bringing the fits if you enjoy it.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you. The fedora, the vest, the semi Tommy Bahama shirt underneath. It's a vibe. It definitely is a vibe.
It's a vibe. Right. It's a generation older than me, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get started, also one other thing do we go. So we're going to be judging this at the end. We're going to be moderating in and out. We're going to be spending as much time as we possibly can watching this, making sure that we get everything down. Call it as objectively and as factually as we possibly can. That's always important, especially since there are still 28% of the population in this country, of the electorate, undecided.
Yes. And
So
with how close this debate is going to be, every single one of that 28% matters.
it does. It does. I mean, the ratio since 2020, the number of boomers who have passed away and the number of Gen Zers who are now legally eligible for vote is completely shifted the political landscape of this, which is why
Yeah.
it's so hard to not take everything, because they're comparing Kamala's numbers to Biden's in 2020, and you have to take that with a grain of salt because the political landscape has infinitely shifted.
Yeah, it is an entirely different. The biome is completely different, and it's interesting because a lot of what cultivated this current political situation is Trump.
Hmm.
When his presidency, I think, did more to shift the political landscape than anything that the Democratic Party did. I mean, Biden really just kind of worked on fixing the problems that Trump created. Whether or not he did that to a satisfactory degree is of course
Ray.
some people would debate that, but you know I think a lot of the young generation voting now,
Hmm.
you have to think a lot of that generation was the Parkland shooting kids, like
Hmm.
the younger freshmen. And
Hmm.
like I think at this point, anybody who was a freshman at Parkland High School is probably old enough to vote
Hmm.
now. So you have that entire generation of kids who were marching on Washington after that
Hmm.
happened. They now get to vote, you know?
Yeah. Hmm.
And that
How?
has that has been a major shift. Young people
Hmm.
were not as interested in voting and in politics as they are in this election, and that's due largely because of Trump's policies.
Right. And I completely agree. To that point, though, I will say with Gen Z being such an influential demographic that both candidates are vehemently going after, you see Trump on masculine
Mhm.
podcasts like Theo
Yeah,
Von. Kamala is what, still about 30% higher with women overall, right?
yeah,
So
and yes, and she actually has a large percentage of the educated Gen Z vote as well.
sure.
Um,
Now, I will say both candidates, if you're Gen Z, see, you and I, we remember Donald Trump in the older days, back in the 90s, even beforehand, when he was still a celebrity business mogul. That's what he was. That was the entire brand that Donald Trump was. Kamala Harris is still relatively new for us in terms of a political track record. We're just really learning about her track record as Attorney General, as DA of California.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Oh, look, a thumbs up. That's nice. But she's still relatively new. She doesn't have a whole lot that other politicians have in terms of trying to figure out like where she stands. To Gen Z, oh, thinker just went dark. I don't know what happened. To Gen Z, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are both new, right? They are inherently people who they don't really know their education and their knowledge of them really starts at like 2015 to 2016, and there really isn't a whole lot extra. So in terms of that, defining who these people are, it is a little bit shifted and jaded depending on which generation you are.
I
It really
apologize for
depends
that.
on. No, it's okay.
Got a phone
I
call.
figured. Oh, okay. I figured you were just like, you know what? Fuck this writer guy. I'm out. I've made my decision. RFK all the way.
Oh man.
You
Yeah.
look like the kind of guy who would put a bear in a fedora.
Uh, I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think I would get too close to the bear, but
And I tell you though, my on my bucket list, like I spend quite a bit of time down in New York City. On my bucket list for 2025 is to get one steak from Peter Luger's, bear free. Maybe
yeah.
not bike free, but I'll go bear free.
Okay.
Just as an update for everybody, we are live at the 2024 presidential debate. This is the pre-debate talk. I appreciate everybody who's hanging out with us, watching with us. Right now, we are waiting. It is live in Philadelphia. We have 20 and a half minutes until the presidential debate. Big question on everybody's minds. Will they shake hands? Will they not shake hands? I personally don't give a shit when it comes to that. Um, But thinker,
Mhm.
the two candidates that we have before us, what do they need to do for this debate?
I think for Harris, I think she needs to really buckle down on giving specifics on what her policy is. She
Okay.
did a little bit of that in her interview with
Mhm.
CNN, but I think that a lot of undecided voters are still like, you didn't really answer the questions that I wanted answered. You know, I think that
Yep.
she just needs to be a little bit more specific. And I understand that
Yep.
there's, an undercurrent of, I guess, caution because she is still the vice president to the current president. So she has to be careful not to, step all over his policies. Uh,
Well,
but
to that point though, I think this might be the opportunity to sever a little bit from him. She is
um,
she is in effect she's breaking off at certain elements of it. You know, she's expanding certain things like the Biden administration gave a $25,000 rental assistance loan for renters to become first-time home buyers. That is an incentive by the Biden administration.
yes.
She is capitalizing on that and she is going forward with that. However, there are other things I think because ultimately what we're seeing is the Biden administration, yes, could they be doing quite a bit more in terms of foreign policy, in terms of Israel and Gaza and Palestine? Absolutely. I think this would be the moment for her to take a little bit more of a stance on that. You know, this is they really saved. Yes, they have their stump ads, they have their speeches, but this is the most watched televised event probably of the year. I mean, you thought the first debate
Now that
was.
you're saying that, I do actually, that does make sense that if you're going to make a sever, this is the time to do it.
Mhm.
Um, I still think that she needs to be somewhat careful. I mean, only
Oh, all of this has
because,
to be done methodically,
but
whether you're Biden or Trump or
finish
Kamala.
to finish answering the question, as far as Trump, he just needs to not be Trump. Is really what it is.
Well,
Like
okay,
he
interesting. What do
needs
you mean by
and
that?
he's been doing. I mean, I guess if you it's a relative. It's kind of a case of relativity, but he's been doing well with. My cat would like to join the live stream. Everybody, just
I
um,
heard you get an extra vote for every cat that you have.
right, like
They're fur babies. I think that counts under JD
yeah,
Vance's
yeah,
lore.
so yeah. That's what JD Vance was talking about.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Um,
you're damn right.
anyway, I think
Now,
Trump just
are you
needs to continue. He needs to continue doing what he has been doing to
Mhm.
the extent that he can do it, which is, just try to be policy based. And it doesn't. It seems like just about every interaction that they have with like with Trump, whether it be a press conference or a rally, he does even now he's still doing the policy stuff, but he's
Mhm.
always got to throw in a bit of his own personal flair.
So that's essentially and what we've been talking about for years now is that that has been the biggest hindrance to Donald Trump is his own veering off because if you look at the record, he's been for and against most of the policies that he had. Now he's basing himself, I think, mainly because of the conservative base behind him on a pro-life stance. He's never been pro-life even before this, and and even to that point, he really needs to stick on policy. He didn't have to press Biden at all on the first debate. He just stood back and watched. I will say, as far as as bad as Trump's first debate was with Biden, he was he was relentlessly on message.
Oh
The man
yes,
was on message. That message was fear in immigration. He stuck to everything. Everything revolved around immigration. Like he was
yes,
completely on message. Kamala needs to essentially, if Kamala wants to win during this debate, what she needs to do is to essentially just talk to the moderator. She can go on the offense a little bit, but essentially
yeah,
she's talking to the moderator. She's talking to the camera. Don't look directly into the camera like Biden did. That was a little weird. But you know, her audience right now is the 28% of undecided electorate right now.
yes.
Um, And
And that's
you know, Trump is going to try to get her off of her game.
and I do think that, you know, she has an advantage with that 28% because we can tell from Donald Trump's approval ratings, people don't like him. You know,
Well,
people don't want to vote for him, but she needs to give them a reason to that 28% to vote for her. The problem
well,
isn't
I
that
mean,
the problem isn't that if she fails here that they're going to go and vote for Trump. They're just not going to vote. You
well, I
know?
mean, you could say that, but then as like far as like recent polls, and yes, okay, you have to take polls with a grain of salt. I mean, it's a neck and neck for a reason. You
Yeah.
know, it's not because if they didn't like Kamala, then they would just not vote. Okay, but there is a 50% give or take margin of error electorate voting for Trump, and that cannot be discounted. You know, that's
No,
one of the
and
reasons why. Because if it wasn't, then she wouldn't need this debate, but she absolutely does need this debate because she needs to define herself. Granted,
yes.
Trump and Vance and the conservative right have had a difficult time trying to get anything to stick because she was either absent or she was responsible for Afghanistan. And at some point, it's hard to determine which is which. So
Yeah.
this is really crucial for both either Trump to define her or Kamala to define herself. Now,
Yeah.
which one comes
Um
first? We'll see.
and yeah, I just yeah, I'm just hoping that there's policy conversation from her part. And I hope that if he
Okay.
and this is gonna be mitigated somewhat from the muted mics,
Mm.
but I'm hoping that she can't get drawn into a, you know, a pissing contest with Trump. You know,
Mhm.
that's his ground. That's where he thrives. She needs
Mhm.
to treat him, you know, like a nuisance,
Mm.
like a fly that is just annoyingly buzzing around. Oh, well.
Just like that, like the fly that knocked your camera straight off its axis. That is a
Oh
mean
man.
fly. That is a Breaking Bad middle of the series fly. Punk Rock Pollyanna, he's a fearmonger. She's got to diminish his potency, stick to specific facts and data. He can't even determine between millions and billions. There is definitely a lot of red meat to be thrown on both sides. Now, Thinker, in terms um, in terms of strict policy, because I think that's really what most people are looking for. I don't believe that the major population is watching this because they want to watch people bully each other. I believe that people are watching this to see how definable these people are, what the
Yeah.
policies are. So at the very end of this, what could the candidates say for you to call this a win, for example? You
Um,
know, whether it's immigration, whether it's the economy, whether it's healthcare, foreign policy, jobs, what do you want to hear from both candidates?
I guess for me that sort of exists on a sliding scale. I think a major victory for Harris would be if she's able if she is able to flip around in any major way the argument
Mm,
about the border. If
okay.
she's able to get people to, because we know that Trump killed a nonpartisan border bill. We
Yep.
know that. But
Hmm.
most, like, a large percentage of that 28, a large group of that 28% doesn't know that. Like they keep hearing that or saying, oh, they're just saying that, or it's just not getting it. It just doesn't seem to be penetrating that there was a border bill and that the only
Now,
person responsible there would be Trump. And if she's able to get that as an issue that people are able to then stick to Trump, that would be a major victory because for some reason her campaign and the Democratic Party has not been able to get that to stick to Trump.
now let me ask you this. If he decides to go and say the only reason I told them to kill that bill is because it was a bad bill. There's no better bill than the bill I would have, and that wasn't it. That's a fake bill, that's a phony bill, that wouldn't get the job done. Is that even worth her picking that fight?
I mean, maybe not. I think that there's some argument to be made of, well, if you're so sure that your bill was superior, what's the problem with us putting this bill into action now to do something now? You like it's
Or
you're saying that you'd
or
rather hold off on fixing a problem just so that
hmm,
you can fix it.
right. Or at the very least, reverse it and ask about his policy, because yes, he is, in Project 2025, there is a litany of discussions about mass deportation. So immigration is a big fear among, I mean, that is the highlight, and the entire reason why Trump wanted to kill that bill is so he could use it for a political campaign. And so because of that, if he's going to use that as a political campaign, yes, immigration is an issue that people fear. Now, granted, the issue at the border is the numbers have been wildly exacerbated on both borders, whether it's Canada or Mexico. However, people are still for immigration and for legal deportation and following the rule of law. However, I think the idea of mass deportation, and Trump recently being quoted calling it a bloodbath, I think that's even more of a nail in his coffin. So if she pushes him to talk a little bit more about his policy, realizing that either he goes off the edge and talks about how he's going to really do a mass deportation that could be a bloodbath, or try to talk his position down, I think that's where she wins, by focusing on his immigration policy. Hers is a little yet to be desired as well. I particularly, or ask him, yeah, exactly, or Adrian Elizondo, thanks for joining the channel. Thanks for joining the stream. Always great to have you. Or ask him how he was going to close the border. Exactly. I don't know if it's wise to bring up things from 2016. You can bring up arguing points. Yeah. I mean, this guy has been in the political limelight, the epicenter of the political limelight, for almost 10 years at this point. There's so much that you could call him out on, from the tax, the $1.7 trillion tax cuts to corporations. We can talk about tariffs if you want. What I want to hear from Kamala, that I've been itching to hear from Kamala for, I would say, probably a few weeks now. I'm not completely sold on the idea of introducing price gouging legislation. I know that has the potential to kill competition. I understand that it really does disrupt the supply and chain demand. Now, coupling that with Trump's implementation of tariffs, I would like to hear a debate on. I would like to hear the price gouging, the price fixing, because she's been quoted by saying one of her policies is within the first 100 days, she is going to propose legislation to Congress about anti-price gouging practices. So I would like to hear a little bit more on that, because price gouging was rampant throughout COVID. Now, the tariffs exacerbated that a little bit, so it kind of went hand in hand. But I still would like to see her potentially dig herself out of that hole, because the economy and economics, or Jesus Christ, the economy and immigration, the top two bugaboos of this campaign, of this election. So I would love to see if she could talk herself out of that. I don't know.
And I would agree with you on that. I think the economy is one of her weakest issues, which if there is a portion of this campaign that really worries me, it is the fact that she is not viewed favorably on the economy. And all the polls show that. And that is my one concern, because it is a very big issue this this election season. And and there are a lot of issues that she has that are firmly behind her, but those are smaller pockets of the population that are concerned about that, to the point that it rivals the economy.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, because this is an interesting thing that we've talked about behind the scenes. An economic policy takes a very long time to actually show results. So, say from Trump's corporate tax cuts, we didn't see results of that until well into 2021 and 2022. We saw many corporate tax rates. They went from 35% to a flat 21%, which saw almost a 362% increase in some of the highest corporations, from whether it's Apple or Meta. And ironically, companies like GM's taxes went up. So it's a little hard to argue that you are for the blue collar worker when you're, praising anti-union people and raising the taxes on companies like GM and manufacturing. Now, it did help intellectual property, so I will give it that. However, it created a lot of inflation that hasn't paid for itself. Same with the tariffs, because the tariffs fell onto the consumer, as they always do. None of these companies took a price cut, and you can look at all of them because they're publicly traded. All of their books and their quarterly earnings are online. They're perfectly there for you to see. Now, let me ask you this, because Trump took credit for a booming economy. I will admit, the stock market did soar under him multiple times, breaking records. However, he inherited a 113-month job growth trend. He inherited a bull market rising out of the Great Recession from Obama. Now, it's not that impressive given the fact that we started so low back in 2008.
Yeah.
Is it possible to shift the narrative back to reality in the sense of the American electorate understanding that economic policy takes a fuckload of time to actually breed results? So everything that Biden is doing right now, we're not going to see results until well after the election is over, well after he is out of office. It takes almost an entire presidential term to show results, and we are so gimme now that we don't have the patience to like separate. How can we get back to that?
And that's what I was going to say. I think both of them are doing exactly that, which is the instant gratification message.
Yep.
Like, I'm going to eliminate price gouging. Like, that sounds very good to the consumer. I'm going to put, I don't know, tariffs is a little bit different. That's more focused on the the American worker. But his tax,
kind of.
the tax cuts that he's claiming are going to be, like, they're both geared towards instant gratification. And I don't, it's a difficult question because I don't know. The problem is and this is not, I'm not trying to be controversial here about whether capitalism is good or bad. But the issue.
Oh, here we go. Let's do that conversation.
Listen.
By the way, we got 3 minutes.
I don't want to sway anybody in either direction here. I'm just saying capitalism breeds competition. You know? And as long as there is a competitive mindset, I don't think that people are going to be able to grasp how long it takes for things to change.
Right. And so I have a hard time believing, after every economic policy that I've analyzed from Trump, I have a very hard time believing that he is a long-term economic policy thinker. I believe he was mainly looking for short-term wins, and especially for lowering the corporate tax rate to the point that he did, to the rate that he did. Short-term wins bolster the economy. Yes, jobs were created, but back in 2019, even before COVID, in 2019, jobs started to decrease. They started to deflate. The economy started to not to falter a little bit. At least the initial trend, the upward trend, started to fall. However, Trump, his tax rate, we were ready, I think, in GDP, it was supposed to be 3.3% increase per year. He bumped it up to 4% with the tax rate, but it was a short-term boost. And the long-term effect is kind of this heightened inflation. I would love to see him potentially, I would love him to see if there's a way that he could explain it, because his current economic policy right now is more tariffs, really. It's more tariffs. It is essentially a pretty much a 2.0. That's make America great again. He's going back to the old. And again, Kamala's slogan, we're not going back. However, I would argue, because he's not really conservative, and neither is 2025. Project 2025 is a different kind of conservatism than we've ever seen before. You can talk to your fiance,
The artist has.
By the way, we've got 56 seconds and counting.
Who's writer? I'm thinker. You're artist.
That's fair.
Yep, 50 seconds and counting.
50 seconds and counting.
All right. Well, I look much less dapper than you, but whatever.
All right. Just a reminder to everybody who's watching, you have about 10 minutes left to submit your 10-term bingo card. There are 20 terms down in the comments down below. Pick 10 of them and post them by 9:10 into the debate. And whoever gets all 10 terms mentioned by either candidates or the moderators, whoever gets it first gets a nice pick of, where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Of any merch from the Writer Reacts merch that you would like. One item, any you would like. There are hundreds of items on here.
Cool, huh?
Go and check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris is
Good.
the writer is cool.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Here we go.
I'm about 10 seconds behind you there, bud.
10 plus 7 for you.
Suck.
Tonight, the high station battle here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election. Their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied at the polls nationally, and key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now. Special, the most consequential.
Come on, that's $1 million idea right there.
We're going to try and be quiet.
All right, here we go.
Donald Trump.
What do you think? Shake hands, not shake hands?
Face to face, historic.
Slap in the face or not slap in the
Kamala
face?
will try to shake hands. She's going to
Yeah.
try and keep
Oh, I
this,
forgot my drink.
You fuck up, dude.
Good evening, I'm David Miller, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
At 9, Lindsay Davis.
Don't forget, guys, bingo cards in by 9:10. And first one to have the moderators mention all 10 talking points gets a free piece of Writer Reacts merch.
Yeah.
Brings us to the rules of
Anything you want, one item.
No topics or questions.
Anything you want from the store, not my house.
Not Writer's house.
Or my house.
Yeah, or our house.
That said,
All right,
you can
anybody
buy some
else?
of the items in my house.
Oh, I am every time Trump says a non-word or Kamala says mother or Biden is mentioned, I am having a nice little sip of this Di Serono. So
Interesting choice.
Di Serono on the rocks
I see.
because I am a
I was
bitch.
gonna say, cheers, bud.
Hey, they shook hands. Well, I'm speaking to you from the future, thinker.
Oh,
It might have somebody poisoned their palm.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you for here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago. And your
Okay,
opponent on the
economy
stage
first.
often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So
Okay.
I was raised as a middle class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage that has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for hardworking people. We know that young families need support.
She is looking directly at the camera.
Intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford
damn
to
it.
buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My
Mother is on my bingo card too. I think somebody
I was actually
Punk Rock Pollyanna. I think you had that too.
But there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I
God,
love
mother
our
again.
small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent on
Oh, she did say trillion.
is to do what he has done before.
I'm gonna get drunk by 9:05. It is 9:05.
Big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump sales tax, which would be a 20%.
Interesting. She's calling it a Trump sales tax.
That you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
With sales tax, you might as well call it a sales tax because the tariff is worse.
Statement. She knows that we're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for what we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they had. It would totally destroy
That's not entirely true. There was much of inflation.
China and other places, they left the tariffs on. When I had it, they had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before. Probably the worst in the nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50.
He said it's been bad for every class. That sounds like a soundbite.
It's been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails.
He brought up the black jobs card. That's interesting. I thought he was going to stay away from that kind of stuff. I at least thought that would have had to be prompted to come out.
Remember, man, I'm about 10 seconds behind you.
Towns throughout the United States. You look at
The future is dark.
You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
Our comment section is kind of becoming our outfit of the day.
I would like to let Vice President.
I would love to.
Her hair looks nice.
Left us. Donald
Come on, you can't say Donald's hair doesn't look nice too.
Unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us.
I love cotton candy.
Public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you on this debate tonight, you're going to hear on the same hard playbook.
Former president
So this is pretty standard. I was waiting for him to say this, but what she's doing is she's laying out what we're going to hear from him. She's labeling everything that he says under the guise of 2025. You know, I was expecting him to do that by saying this is like a far liberal Biden administration continuum. But this is she's turning this into a referendum on him.
You to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
Some good, some bad.
It's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some
Trump saying again that he does not know anything about Project 2025, but admitted that there are some good, some bad ideas, which is a little hard to claim if you've never read
He
it.
has a number of people on his staff who were involved with it. His vice president wrote the foreword on the book of the man who wrote Project 2025.
Right. The majority of the people in charge of Project 2025 were on his staff.
And where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks. We did
It's
things
not the
that
time
nobody
to be demanding credit,
And
Trump.
people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs.
During breaks, we're going to have some mid-debate discussions. We're going to have some post-debate discussions, so stay tuned for that. We're also going to be announcing the winner of our bingo night. So we are officially closed on that front. So thank you guys for entering that in. Let's keep going.
When you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan.
Punk rock Pollyanna. Yep, you are absolutely right.
Strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. Let's have a look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump.
You can still pick him up even with the mic off.
Because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Bring up our worth, our value as a
I
country.
went to the Wharton School of Finance.
People want to be
And
able to
all those
do
professors.
Oh my God.
It's a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work, create jobs, and create a lot of
There it is.
Run, spot, run.
for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run.
The Vice President brought up
Just we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at this plan. She doesn't have a plan.
national sales tax. I do want to drill down on something pointed out. The Vice President brought up tariffs. You responded. Well, let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out, across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that tariffs at that level costs are then passed on to the consumer. President Harris has argued it'll be higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans have higher prices because of tariffs?
I just have to say, as a correction, in terms of basic economics, China will not be paying higher prices because of tariffs, because tariffs fall onto the consumer to pay the higher prices.
Yeah.
Tariffs, if anybody didn't know,
exactly right.
is a tax. Tariffs are a tax on imports, and the importer always pays, but they trickle it down to the consumer. That's why tariffs have been depleting, because most people don't like to use them.
I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy.
Omni Collective Creativity, thank you for joining us. You are absolutely right. Tariffs are a tax. They are a tax on imported goods. Yep.
It was great that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military. Basically, signals out that a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with America, focusing on investing in American.
This is interesting.
That leads the race on
I like this.
quantum computing. focusing on what we need to do.
There's a lot in there.
America's workforce, so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. What Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi. What he did during COVID, look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that she was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
First of all, they bought the
That
chips.
is a lie. We are one of the highest chip manufacturers in the world.
Philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy, but if she ever got elected, she'd change it, and it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just
He's trying exactly
He likes to,
what
he likes
happened
to
last
rally
year.
back around to his opponent's weakest issue in topics that aren't on that issue.
He is going back on exactly everything that the original debate with Biden was, which was nothing but fear mongering and xenophobia. Every question is, this is the economy. Everything is going back to immigration.
Yes.
It is exactly, it's a carbon copy, the same playbook from back in July.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you often touted that you were able to kill women last year. You said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would look to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that we shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've pushed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
The reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia.
Have we fact checked that yet?
Excellent.
I mean, I can tell you right now, it's not true.
And we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that.
He said it.
Because they
He said it. I can't believe he pulled that one out.
Which I think is a horrible thing, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential thing says abortion in the 9th month.
I can't look up execution after birth on my work laptop. I'm gonna have to find a different route.
The baby is born.
I gotta find a different way to fact check.
We're like, we know that's not true.
I did something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now,
87% of Republicans.
Incest and life of the mind. Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important.
Cannot
And
believe.
now states are forming it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every leader, Scott, every Democrat, every Republican, Kansas, this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. It's happened now.
Somewhat liberal still could be rather centrist.
Kansas,
True.
much more than all of the agreement before. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court-
Interesting. Okay.
And I give
What?
tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it's legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to this.
Well, as I said, you're gonna hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact.
So CNN actively kept out of fact checking ABC's taking a different approach here. That's interesting.
Well, I think when you make lies that are so flagrantly false.
Well, the interesting thing was the reason why they didn't get involved was because they thought Biden would call Trump out on every single lie, but Biden was incapable of doing so. Kamala could probably do it. So it's interesting in seeing that they're the ones still calling out her lies when I feel like she could do it.
Even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next.
Oh, hum 37, thanks for joining the chat.
And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government and Donald Trump certainly should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women not to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because their healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that.
When Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban.
As President of the United States, I will proudly
there will be a national abortion, a monitor that will be monitoring your
if Donald
pregnancy.
Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there will be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe
Again, it's a
certain
lie.
freedoms.
Interesting.
Freedom to make decisions about one's own body should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
There she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else. And every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states. And the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years.
Oh, he's claiming responsibility for Roe.
And they wanted
That's gutsy.
and I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if they
Well, you have to, because again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House.
That's very funny, ho hum.
She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So she just thought, you know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time at the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. He went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because you're running me, J.D. Vance has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I did discuss it with J.D. in all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he's speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss.
What do you mean they couldn't get student loans? I thought they passed it.
They taunted young.
That a Republican judge.
That had loans.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give more time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term.
That is a little bit of a pivot.
for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot in red and blue states votes, the people of America voted for freedom.
Vice President.
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts.
Your face, Ryder, is something to behold.
I've been a leader.
I'm just going to assume there was a mother in there, and I'm going to drink.
I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing.
We have a lot to talk about.
You doing okay over there, bud?
In the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month. Okay, would you do that?
Hey.
What do you got, Thinker?
Hmm?
¿Qué estás bebiendo, drinker? Thinker? Sorry.
He can't drink. He's got to work. I'm drinking for him.
Oh, okay. Not even a little seltzer?
I was hoping that she wouldn't get into there was a little bit there, but she got into a little bit of a back and forth with him.
Yeah, she's pulling back now.
Yeah.
We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States,
Here we go.
including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border.
She might do exactly what you said.
Right now, overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed.
I want her to make it stick, though.
Fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there's so many families watching tonight who've been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us.
You're absolutely right. She does need to show emotion for reproductive rights.
Drugs and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump.
It would be great for Trump if he did too, but she's the one taking that baton and running, because it doesn't sound like he really cares to act that much empathetic about that.
And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have is a former president, someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing the problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your dreams and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts.
Oh, wow. I did not expect that.
President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response. Why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the.
First, let me respond to
Good.
cases. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's paying them to be there. And then
That was an amazing play.
she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest
This was an amazing play.
history of politics. That's because people want to take.
There's one thing that you don't need to talk about right now, and it's the size of your rallies.
Years ago. And
The size of your rallies when you were asked a direct question that people want to know the answer to.
they have done to
I feel like ABC saw this coming, and they're just gonna drop a piñata in the shape of Martin Luther King.
looking for what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk, not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, and they're eating the pets, the people.
What is happening?
And this is what's happening in our country.
What is happening?
As far as rallies
What?
are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase. Make America great again. She's destroying this country. If she's president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, will end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to here you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to
I'm sorry,
there. He told us
I'm still on eating cats and dogs. Like, my brain hasn't caught up to the rest of this yet.
the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on
Let me
television.
just say here, this is the
People on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
What?
city
What?
was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
What's
President,
fine?
I'll let you respond to the rest of it.
You talk about extreme. You know, this
You're right. You're exactly right, Ray.
I actually have the endorsement.
You as well, ho hum.
Who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of Vice President Dick Cheney and Congressmember Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former
Omni Collective. I don't know exactly what I was expecting.
his former chief of staff,
I know exactly what both parties need to do to win.
Constitution of the United States.
I'm a little shocked that it kind of went
Look
off
at
the
his
rails
face.
this
Look how
quickly.
Mad he is.
Oh Christ!
Ryder, take a look at Donald Trump's face and just see how he's so mad.
This is completely
Could be
unrelated.
the Botox.
It could be. It could be hardening. Like, completely unrelated, but he has refused to look at her even
I think the
once.
choice is made in this election.
She has looked him dead in the eye, like right now.
When I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those.
Try to bring it back.
Just
Keep to the facts.
things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper, he was no good, I fired him, so he writes a book. Another one writes a book, because with me they can write books, with nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy, look at the inflation. They didn't spend any of their economy. They never saved it. That's a good way.
I got more books than any president in history.
I got more votes than any Republican in history.
I think you need another bottle.
In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation.
Oh, 37. That is a very good point.
National Guard. You say things get out of control. You have no problem using the U.S. military. You also said you
That is a very good point.
would you deport 11 million?
God, the Di Serono accumulates at the bottom.
It's much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed
Millions.
street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And then now,
You know what's interesting is that Venezuelans are what tipped Florida like heavily for Trump in 2020 and 2016. Interesting tactic going after them so hard here.
I don't think it's a big enough bait. I don't think it's a big enough group of people that he generally cares.
And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them.
It's as long as it needs to be.
Probably did it because they think they're going to get votes.
This goes until about 10:30, and then they have a post-debate discussion. So we're about a third of the way through, everybody. Stay strong.
It's never been anything done like this at all. They
Punk Rock Pollyanna, what kind of wine you drinking?
our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world,
Crap.
crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof, despite their fraudulent statements that they made. Crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created.
Should have added the word fraud to the bingo card.
Well, I think this is so rich.
You know, that's my bad. I really should have.
Prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And
Ah,
we are
Nuovo
each
Ghetto
person
Piano
standing
Grigio.
on the issue of
Classy.
about respect
I'm not
for
so
the
lucky.
rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal
By the
law
way, to
enforcement
people who are
for
asking about it, saying that they are misdemeanors,
on the day after he was arraigned on
defrauding
third
business records
felony
in the first degree in New York
Let's
State
talk
is an
about
E
what
felony,
is
so they are
important in
felonies.
this race. It is
Past the
important
statute of limitation, or no, not past the
turn
statute of
the
limitation.
page
Sorry.
on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to
L'chaim.
support small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I'm going to win the rest of the appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Phony Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA of New York.
Side note: are we still on immigration here? I can't tell.
He's a criminal.
No, he's talking about his court cases.
Was found essentially guilty on the documents.
This was definitely practiced by the Kamala Harris campaign.
A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand that this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop it. We know the dance is not going to stop it. It's up to the American people to stop it.
Thank you. Lisa.
Vice President Harris, in your last fight for president,
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy. It was a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to, Lindsay.
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban
Nice.
fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policies
Clear in 2020.
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of it, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times. You guys say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting
Social
Wow.
Security and Medicare.
is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have
And
done.
a perspective.
Protecting
Well, she said her values haven't changed. Let's see if he jumped on that. He's been doing that recently.
And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
I intend to be that president.
It's okay, punk rock. I'm Amaretto talking.
The leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump,
Well, first of all, I wasn't given $200 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father. I learned a lot from him, but I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. You don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out. I think
Wow.
she wants to do to let
That's so petty.
that burned down Minneapolis. They were trying to get him out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to
I never thought I would see the Regina George version of Trump.
Just to finish,
You can't sit with us.
in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to drilling.
Fact check. We're actually the highest in term. We've done the most offshore drilling under the Biden administration.
Yeah.
And yes, offshore still means U.S.
You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert.
If anyone here is a Republican, welcome. We're happy to have you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 2nd, to march to the Capitol, you said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out of the Capitol that day. The officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on.
Never shot her.
Ain't it funny how families end up like that now?
Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so
I should have added pouring to the bingo card. He loves that word.
That she allowed to board. She was the border zone. Remember that. She was the border zone. She doesn't want to be called the border zone because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, "Oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet." That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it. One of those people.
Does this guy seriously think that if crime rates are going down in other countries, it must mean that there's like a set amount of crime that happens in the world? And if it's down around the rest of the world, it must mean that it's all accumulating in one place, i.e. America.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in.
We got Dune references in this chat.
This is going to be a very big, whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened.
Do we know if that's true? If he wanted to give Nancy Pelosi National Guard soldiers?
No, he withheld it, and he said that he wasn't responsible. But Pelosi and Schumer pled for the National Guard.
Vice President Harris was responsible.
He was the one who withheld.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also...
There's actually a Vice documentary showing them pleading for it
And on
behind the
that
scenes.
day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital.
This is the time that the Democrats start showing their evolution by pro-law enforcement, pro-patriotism. Let's see how he reacts. As a new conservative, let's see how this goes.
For exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of
Oh, Omni, that is an insult to fifth graders.
spewing anti-Semitic. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys on militia, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign.
We love our teachers.
Stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back.
Related to energy, because they've destroyed.
Have you noticed that they're cutting the mics off, but they're letting him speak after? It's essentially the same as just not having a mic or mic muting.
That was where bloodbath was. Also,
I think she's done a good job of
as you would say, debunked.
not getting drawn into him and a craziness. And the moderators have done a good job at like not letting him go off on a major like
It was debunked.
tirade.
Every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of the stuff up. I ask you this: you talked about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through the southern?
He went back to the border again.
Leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill.
Because it's that simple.
All he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed. Those people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue.
Unreal.
Because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, and many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short. Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
I said it sarcastically. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got 75 million votes.
It was so easy to say that you lost in this moment. You would have gotten so many
They
undecideds.
laid up a softball for him to finally flip the page and say, yeah, I lost. And not
In this-
lose face. And yet he couldn't even do that.
Mind you, this was the topic directly after the January 6th topic. Mother.
These pieces of video detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisper. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them.
No judge looked at it.
And so
They said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you do a special on it, I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem.
Very well point home. We're very well put.
And the
Hold
problem
on.
that we have right now is we have a nation.
They never do.
in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by whisker, so he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from
Jesus Christ.
this week. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, that he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. Your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do?
support
Donald
having
Trump was
president.
fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing
Will
that.
of the vote was
But
free
we
and fair election.
cannot afford to have a
I'm gonna
president
tell
of the United States
I have traveled the world as vice president of the
attempts,
United
as he did in the past,
and
to
world
upend
leaders are
the will of the voters in a free
I
and
have
fair
talked with
election.
military
And I'm
leaders.
going to tell you that I have
And they
traveled
think
the world as vice
race.
president of the
I
United
think
States.
moderation has been
And
fair.
world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump.
Presidential
I have
It's
talked
a
with
little
military
left-leaning,
leaders.
I would
some
say.
from
It's a little bit
Normandy,
more
and
fact-checkery
they say
towards
we're
Trump.
disgrace.
However, I will say,
And
to
when
be
you
fair,
then
Trump
talk in
needs
this
to be a little bit
way
more
in a
fact-checked.
presidential debate and
He's
deny
not really bending the truth
over and
too
over
too
again
much.
are
She's
cases
not
you have
talking
lost
a whole lot
because
about
you did,
policy,
in
which
fact,
as much
lose
as I
that
would like her
fight.
to. But Trump, this is all about Trump shooting himself in the foot.
We do not
Um,
have the candidate to my right.
and I think the moderators are doing
to not be
fair.
confused about facts. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you limited response.
Okay, let me just tell about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong.
Victor
He's
Orban?
smart.
That's where you go?
They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why
Oh.
is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him.
And Biden
China
put
was
it
afraid
back
of
on
him.
day one, but he ended the
Was afraid
XL
of him.
pipeline.
What's
The
going on with
XL pipeline in
He
our
said
country.
Russia
How did we go from Orban to the pipeline?
Going all over Europe.
And Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country. He ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you
Oh
saw
my God.
just a few months ago,
Victor Orban. I can't believe that he's using Victor Orban as a reference.
14 million votes. But you did. You talk about
Like,
the democracy. You got 14 million
you
votes.
didn't have anybody else?
And you know what?
No one?
He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out.
They did very well.
And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but what's hit with it because
Your time
I
is up.
think we're going to do very well.
You've got a lot more here.
Turning out to take Israel Hamas war and the hostages who are still-
Okay, this is one that I've been wanting to get some clarification on.
Israel has a right to defend itself, but he added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Let's understand how we got here. On October 7th, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly.
It is also true.
It'll be interesting to see if he can somehow muster up a way to spin this on them
And it's a big wood.
I don't know if he can. He's never shown
without
enough
looking, you know, pro Netanyahu or pro Hamas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution,
There you go. Anybody who had two-state solution on their bingo card.
Israel and an equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you,
Am I getting my own hoodie?
itself, in particular as it relates
No, that would be terrible.
and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians.
Just so you know, I am looking at the overall terms and I'm crossing them off as we go. So if anybody gets bingo, let me know and I'll verify.
And also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza.
If I were president, it would have never started.
What are the odds that Trump thinks two-state is the border between New York and Jersey?
Well, we would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up. Far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money.
Can we fact check that about Iran being broke under Donald Trump?
Spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror. Horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know.
And more importantly, where they are, where Iran is now.
Terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing.
I think that's actually more important is, are they actually a rich nation now? I haven't heard anything about them being overly in any better of a position.
Now get the war, Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Huh.
That's not how that works.
That's absolutely not
The war in Ukraine, though, it could be because he might have a deal with our good buddy, his good buddy Putin.
Just so you guys know, PolitiFact is running a live, real-time fact checker for anybody who wants to check. Actually,
it is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin
to Ukraine,
that
it was
he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant.
that these dictators
Well
and
known
autocrats are rooting
love
for you
letters
to
with
be
Kim
president again
Jong-un,
because they're so
and
clear.
it is
They
absolutely
can
well known
manipulate you.
that these dictators and autocrats are rooting
That
for
is
you to
why
be president again because they're
so
so
many
clear.
military leaders
They
who you
can
have worked with
manipulate you
have told me
with
you
flattery
are
and
disgraced.
fakeness.
That
And
is
that
why
is why
we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and
You
wrong
are
on national
disgraced.
security, including the importance of
We
upholding
understand that
and
we have to
respecting
have
in
a
highest
president
regard
who
our
is not
military.
consistently weak and wrong on national security, including the importance of
That's weak
upholding
on
and
national security by
respecting in
allowing
highest
every
regard our
nation
military.
last month
President Harris,
for the
thank you.
year, 168 different countries sending people into our country.
National security by allowing every nation last
Nostra last
for the
week
year.
said, I hope she wins.
16 different countries sending people into our country.
And back to the immigration thing again. He is incapable of staying away from this point,
They're weak
and she called it.
grossly incompetent.
She's proving he's proving her right.
Someone go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made. Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world, over Germany and all over Europe, because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, is paying a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to go to.
Going to Germany and all over Europe.
oh,
And Biden, by the way, is paying
We have a lot of issues to get to.
okay, all right.
All right, first break.
First break. We're already 2/3 of the way through this thing. All right, who's drunk?
I am not drunk enough.
Hey, all right. So,
Oh.
thoughts?
Oh my goodness.
So many.
greater energy efficiency.
So, I mean, one.
I don't think
Can you-
this is going well for Trump, if I'm being honest. I think this started going south the moment, like, and he started to reel it back in a little bit, but like, he got off topics about talking about eating dogs and cats, which is like,
Yeah, I know.
way,
Hey,
that's crazy.
Thinker, do you want to? Can you mute your TV?
Oh yeah.
No, sure.
.com/UN Live.
Okay, yeah. So they started off like they tried with the policy, and this is one of the tough things with an hour and a half debate on. This is very, very delicate, thoroughly complex things, and I don't know if these. I mean, these debates are always supposed to be sensational, and they're always supposed to have those catchy buzzwords. You can't get into the meat of a debate. It's almost like asking a Miss America pageant, contestant, how to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in 30 seconds or less. It's like, oh shit, if she could do it, then make her president. But no, it's an impossibly difficult thing to do, and they have 2 minutes to do it. Now, I will say, yes, to your point, they could have done a lot less animal cannibalism stories. They did talk a little bit, like she said, she will not change her viewpoints on fracking, or no, she did. She will not go back to a position of eliminating fracking. They did talk about the tariffs. They talk about trade. However, it is really just kind of conjecture at this point. Thank God that we have, channels like us. Thank God we have PolitiFact to really in real time fact check this stuff.
Well, and the fact that on his foreign policy, when he's talking about if his example of a world leader is Viktor Orban, that's a ballsy reference to throw out there, because I think that there's enough people out there that know that Viktor Orban is not a good man.
Viktor Orban, if there was ever a time to, one of Trump's main objectives was to not show a sort of soft side for authoritarianism, because he is being seen as one himself. And then you end up praising Viktor Orban. Now, to me, this is the part that they wanted to be mic'd. This is the unhinged part. Now, to punk rock Pollyanna's point, she laid out all the red meat, and boy, did he eat it up.
And I think that the Harris campaign was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, lining up the questions the way they did, because especially when it comes to the January 6th riots, followed up by him denying the election, they made him contradict himself.
Yep.
And she called him weak, but she did it in a way that was, more referential than anything else. She put it out there as like, leaders around the world see you as weak. It wasn't I am calling you weak. This is the world sees you as weak. And that was a big thing. They needed to get the weak thing out there, because that's something that pushes his buttons. He cannot be seen as a weak leader.
Now, I want to ask your opinion on this. I don't know when they're going to be coming back, but using the thread of xenophobia as the byline throughout all of your policies, I believe the people who are inherently racist, who are never going to accept people who look different, who think differently from them to exist in this country, they've already made up their minds. Those aren't the people who are needed to watch this debate. Do you think that is an acceptable through line for the undecideds? I think we're back, by the way. So maybe we'll just tag that on to the end, or you can answer it now if you want.
We can tag it on, or I think you and I are going to get together a little later in the week or something, and have a discussion about this as well. So
yeah, we can do it later. They're talking about the war in Ukraine now.
Can you hear it? I'm on a charge of the war in Ukraine for now 2.5 years. into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened even further to other countries. You can say this for 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight.
It's very funny on being collected.
Would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want
That's very
the war
good.
to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe.
That is not a winning argument. They have proven time and time again, veering away from your NATO allies because of transactional payments is not winning moderates over.
No.
But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president. Okay, they respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years. He hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try again.
Because
To be fair, Ray, I didn't put billions because that would be too easy. I knew he would say billions almost about 1 million times, and I would be on the floor pissing myself right now.
After I left, unfortunately,
I mean, you may still.
our country has gone to hell. But after I left,
We're not going to talk about that.
After I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. Must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea.
I should have added World War III.
Stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War
I think the
III.
prisoner exchange is a good way to start this off about dealing with Russia.
We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to be clear,
They threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up.
What?
Just clarifying the question. Do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war? Yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done. Negotiate a deal.
I've never heard in any debate from him this much fear-mongering.
Uh-huh.
Take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get
He is really doubling down on the fear mongering.
in this moment, but also as commander.
It's fear.
Vladimir Putin. And would it be any different from what we're seeing?
Just wait.
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Oh.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of faith
Punches.
shit with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Oh.
Vice President Harris.
Ho, ho, ho. Ho, 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 ho.
So you did see the cannibalism story.
I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow, quiet place. He would have been sitting in Moscow.
Nobody ever thinks about that.
Nobody ever thinks about nuclear weapons? What?
Other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't even talk about that. Nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening.
What?
He does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days. And that's the kind of talent.
I don't think that's accurate, right? She was not on a peacekeeping mission.
She wasn't. She wasn't.
Did the invasion.
You know, most of this, he's going to try to pin every Biden administration occurrence on her. You know, mind you, this is the vice president that nobody remembered was vice president.
Vice President
Yeah.
Harris, have you
This
ever-
stuff, I mean, front page news, if she was actually part of all of this.
You're gonna hear a bunch of lies coming from this one. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We talked about Ukraine and Vladimir. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. We came up with it in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay out. He said,
Oh, God.
I got them to pay up by saying,
for years we were paying almost all.
And here he is again, hammering down on a point that you know doesn't attract the undecided voter.
I missed it. Who did he say said this stuff?
I missed that portion. I missed that. I missed who apparently said
I'm guessing
that.
I'm guessing it was Zelensky.
Just a poignant moment today at Capitol Hill honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
That's a very good point.
Here we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker.
Well, that's actually true. Not a single U.S. soldier still in active duty in Afghanistan.
Yep.
He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of such significance.
I agree, Ho-Hum. It's getting dangerously close to having to talk about that. And I feel like
Diplomacy where we invite and receive.
Trump, with his rebuttal, might latch onto it. We'll see. He's done it in the past.
Former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the president of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that we began the negotiations
Yeah, thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved.
With snipers specifically.
That's the fighting force.
Sorry.
in Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because they deal with real
It's like he's talking about a game of Fortnite.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're gonna have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're gonna have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out
Beautiful military.
To be fair, almost triple the number of Americans died in Afghanistan under Trump than under Biden-Harris.
Damn right.
And just to finish,
Very good point.
they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us.
All right, so he's talking about it at least a little bit.
A little bit.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how
Anything for the community, punk rock.
President Trump thanked her black, and now she
Happy to do it.
in this country. Mr. President, you recently said
Oh yeah, no, trust me, hold on. We're not saying it's a cognitive, coherent rebuttal, but it's a rebuttal nonetheless.
I want to ask a bigger picture.
It's closer to the policy point than he's been all night.
Racial identity of your opponent.
I don't. And I
It's
don't care.
policy Trump versus
I don't care.
in the moment Trump.
You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words. So
I
I
don't
see.
know. I don't know.
No way.
If she was not black, that she put out. And I'll say that. And then I read that she was black. And that's okay. It's okay.
What
That's okay.
are you doing? What?
I mean,
Oh
it's
no.
a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
She's talking about
You
it.
know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than separates us, and we don't want it.
As long as it's not, an entire campaign strategy of, feeding the DEI rumors or claims, accusations, like,
He was
I think this is a good time to rebut it.
he owned land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated.
Mind you, Gen Z is far less racist than everybody before.
Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first Black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that. Want better than this. want someone who understands as I do. I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay.
President Trump, this is
Destroying our country.
I do agree with you on that one.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park fight. They said,
Mayor Bloomberg, really?
I said, well, if they pled guilty,
That because that's an objective voice in politics.
and if they pled guilty, then they pled. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden.
Notice that the topic is racism and inclusivity.
Worst inflation we've
Which I will say is smart for him to pivot, but not without, going back to the "is she black? I don't know" comment.
Right.
Briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes
It's not. It isn't going to be enough. All the polls show that his base is not even close to big enough to win him the election. He really does need to try and get the undecided vote. I just don't think that what he's talking about today is doing that.
And let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas.
Well, all right. So now she's getting into her policy. That's good about the child tax credits. That's what I've been waiting for.
Child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by
You're absolutely right.
help with down payment.
Absolutely. Shameless plug, guys. If you like what you're seeing, leave a like, leave a thanks, leave a super chat, leave a little tip. We appreciate everything from you, and your patronage goes right back into the channel. So thank you. Here we go. Let's turn to policy. Okay, David, where were we before this?
Thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President Trump.
Let's turn to policy, please.
To defund the police, she has a flat plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President
She
Trump.
has a plan to not allow fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay,
That's what her plan is until justice.
I think the former president has said something twice that I need to
Nope.
respond to.
Sir, we're gonna
Respond by one time to what
President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy healthcare. Always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up.
Yeah,
with
ho-hum, I know.
things, we're gonna do it and we're gonna replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous.
It wouldn't change it because you didn't have anything better.
If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up.
You wanted
They
them
had a
to-
chance.
You wanted
Even when it came down to McCain, his final vote, they still had no replacement.
Let it rot. And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in this administration. We got the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is that.
What are you? What?
What language are you speaking?
What are you rambling about right now?
And make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing, but it's still never going to be.
You
great,
are the
and it's
rock,
too
my guy.
expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans.
If you haven't read it, Project 2025 has some very interesting suggestions when it comes to healthcare.
Yes.
So they kind of do have a plan. I
They
don't
do have a
believe
plan.
it's in the interest of the majority, but there is more of a plan now than there was before.
I'm not president right now, but if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less
Yes.
expensive. And there are-
Well, you know what, ho-hum? That's exactly why we need to take away all police guns. So we can't do that.
It's not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, we supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely supported over the last 4 years as vice president private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking, and then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both guns.
When Donald
Very
Trump was
nice.
president, 60 times he tried.
As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, but just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time. When I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught.
What is he doing with his face right now?
The late great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, "No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan." And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it. That's President Harris in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
So
lot
my mistake, number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to do. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody
you gotta-
government insurance where you wait.
At this point, you need to cut him off. I think this is the problem.
We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for
I don't think so. I think this is exactly why they wanted the mics to not be banned, to not be muted on the Harris ticket.
Clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President
It will be
Harris-
interesting to see if he goes down this rabbit hole or if he switches to what the Republicans have been doing, which is to talk about the expensive
what we know
nature
is that
of
anyone
renewable
who has
energy
any
so far,
mistake was experience these
which is
extreme
definitely more moderate.
now it's
We'll
either
see if
being
that
denied
happens.
insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President,
Hey,
for the last 4
We
years,
have created.
Anyway,
I should have put
guys.
Bird Cemetery on there. What was that?
So, Ryder, I got to get going here.
Everybody, bid a fair adieu to the fedora adorning thinker. Thinker has to go do exactly what we all admire and go work at night,
Yes.
in the middle of the
Yes.
night, and miss out on all of this amazing non-threatening fun that we're having.
And now I'm very upset that I didn't get a drink in, because this is one of those
Okay,
debates.
drink on a factory floor. That's the American way. Some good old PBR.
No.
All right. Thank you everybody for having me. Thank you, Ryder, for having me. I can't wait to get together and discuss this a little bit more.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll do a follow-up video within the next few days and do a big old review. We will still be having a review right after the debate. We will talk about things. It'll be just me and all of you, so that's fine. But thank you so much, Thinker, for your insight, for your thoughts, for your presence, for your apparel, for your fiance, and your cats.
Yes. Thank you very much.
so much. Thank you so much for being here. We will join later. Stay tuned in the future because Writer Reacts will be coming out with a brand new set of political podcasts and non-political podcasts that will be featuring Thinker as a co-host and or guest. So, everybody, thank you so much, Thinker. We will keep going. Without Thinker, we will keep going solo, but we'll see Thinker sometime very soon.
All writing, no thoughts.
Yep.
All right. See you later, Ryder. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, let's keep going with this. Let's get this fact check up here.
Why did she pay $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both.
And just in time for a commercial break. Stop screening, stop sharing. All right. Well, it's 10:36. They said that this would probably go until sometime between now and 11. The next ABC program is at 11, so I'm assuming that this should wrap up soon. They definitely do have a lot of topics. My God. I don't know what you guys think about this right now. I think we're somewhat on a similar spectrum when it comes to this. This has been an absolutely flooring night. I don't see you will have people coming out of this saying that Trump will win. I don't even want to, say things a little bit too quickly. I don't want to really jinx anything, but Kamala stayed true. She stayed on message as for the most part. She had her policies. She unveiled a little bit. Trump tried. His policies don't really seem to be there. It's the through line of xenophobia. I think the American electorate is honestly tired of. We have seen this. This is kind of what they're pushing. They have learned. This is the biggest part of the Harris campaign, is that this is an evolution of the Democratic Party in which you don't play by Trump's rules. If you react to him, you are playing by his rules. You are playing his game. If you just shrug him off, say it's the same old shtick, and move on, this is where the Harris campaign is to that point. And yet we are still 50-50. Now, in terms of any kind of fact checking, which is what we like to do on here, let's see. He likes to talk about who the hell is feeding Trump info. Well, it supposedly was Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard was the former Democratic Congresswoman turned Trump debate prep. So that's a turn. That's quite a turn. Matt Gaetz. Now, there have been reports that Trump is adverse to certain types of policy prep debate. So they've literally coined it as policy time. I don't know what that says. It's debate prep. Kamala literally locked herself in a hotel room for 5 days prior to prep for this debate. And then we have policy time. Now, I don't know how well that's working for him. We'll see near the end. We'll see. Really, it really comes down to the polls. Everybody is going to have their different decisions and their different opinions here, but it comes down to what the final turnout is in November. Yes, numbers are down post DNC. However, there's always this pop that never holds post convention, whether it's the RNC, whether it's the DNC. I don't care if you have Hulk Hogan. I don't care if you have Lil Jon. The numbers always never hold. So seeing something like this is what people watch. This is where the policy is. You're never going to see policy in a convention. You saw a little bit of it from her, but not too much. It's not a State of the Union. It's more of a rah-rah speech. You want to keep that momentum going. Now, let's see. I do want to get into, so we can have a better idea. Now, we talked little bit about this. Trump mentioned tariffs. I want to mention tariffs a little bit because tariffs, people really need to know about them, because it's very easy to say that tariffs can be a good thing if you don't know a lot about them. It can also be a bad thing if you don't know a lot about them. So let's learn about them now. Trump's presidency was comprised of tariffs, trade wars, tax cuts, deregulation, and massive amounts of immigration restriction and deportation. Now, tax cuts and job acts, that's one thing. We can talk about that. Now, tariffs. As you guys rightly alluded to, tariffs are a tax on imports. The importer pays the tax on it. So what happens is China gives us, say, bicycles. Now, it's a tax on imports with the hope that we as consumers will go to a more domestic product. However, that never actually works. And you can see that from the profit margins of companies like Apple, from companies like Meta, from companies like Walmart. Now, Walmart, for example, I'll use this because this is a very specific example, because this is what happened. When you tax imports, Trump started out with a 10% tax on $200 billion of Chinese imports. Bicycles were included. Say a bicycle costs $100 at Walmart, and now you have a 10% tariff on it. That 10% tariff now means that bicycle costs $110. Now, Walmart can split the difference, paying $5 of that and making $5 go to the rest of the consumer. But that means both people were losing out, and they just raise prices for us consumers to take, which is why tariffs are bad, because we end up paying more. We are back already. My God, these debate breaks are so short. Let's keep going here. Yes, he absolutely is the reality. The emperor wore no clothes. That really is his MO. I'm going with just Sprite now because DeSerono's not being kind to me right now.
To make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was the DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a
She's used that line quite a bit, that she only has one client, the people.
Or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever ask them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back.
I think the alcohol is fine. It's the debate that's not tummy friendly.
President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So he just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan.
That's not
What
true.
these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president.
I don't know. If you don't know how many illegals are in there, how can you tell how many of them are criminals? And that is the end of the 2024 presidential debate. Vice President Kamala Harris, former 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Whew. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this was something, you know. I think this is exactly what we thought it was going to be. I don't think either candidate performed in a way that I didn't expect them to. At this point, it shouldn't be surprising. However, that's not to say when Trump acts the way that he does, it shouldn't be surprising that he does. First of all, I do believe in the sense based on factual policy, based on swaying people, in the sense that you want this entire thing, even as sensational as it is, this entire thing was built and created. This debate was so you could sway moderates. Polls have shown different focus groups have shown, which in a sense can be a lot better because you get to meet up with those people after. Focus groups have shown people are not deterred by the rampant xenophobic through line. They're not. It hasn't moved people in a long time. Fox, as much as they like to push it, they've veered away a little bit from it. Not all the way, but a little bit of it. So in the terms of factual policy, Harris, I think, took this. Trump had moments. He had many, many moments. They cannot say between the moderators and between Harris that he didn't have many, many moments to capitalize it. The problem is it's difficult for him to do it. And so to my point, yes, it is very hard for Donald to stay on message. It is very hard for him to implement actual numerical policy. There are many things that they could have discussed, like Kamala coming out saying that she was going to introduce legislation for anti-price gouging, and they called it price fixing. Many, many economists called it price fixing, which I do believe would hurt the capitalist economy. It would hurt competition. It would manipulate supply and demand, which is never good, and end up causing a more of an inflationary reaction, because we all know many corporations, they do not like to sacrifice their bottom line. Hence, many of the corporate tax cuts that were caused by Trump, which caused a $1.7 trillion tax cut that did not pay for itself. That's one thing. However, we can get into that, all that stuff later. But that doesn't go to say we cannot be desensitized to what Trump is actually saying. This was, on its face, a terrible debate for Trump. He ate right out of her hand. There are a lot of policy decisions that you could have made. Again, Trump being the business mogul, being the the so-called economist. If the economy was booming under him, then they would stand to reason that he was going to um, call her out on economic policy. The only thing that he said is that it failed. And the one thing that he was told to do, and I think he did to a degree, was continue to relate her to Biden, to continue to say that she and Biden were together. You notice while Biden was running, it was the Biden administration did this. After he dropped out and after Kamala took over, it became the Biden-Harris administration. And now the vice president is kind of a figurehead. Yes, they are president of the Senate, and she broke the record for the highest number of tie-breaking votes ever as president of the Senate. Other than that, yes, she was in charge. She was in charge of some things in Afghanistan, some things with South American and Central American countries on immigration. That does not make her a czar. The only reason they use that was just a fluffy buzzword to make people think of communism, Marxism, and Russian. So other than that, it's really a figurehead position. And Trump even came out saying that after JD Vance, the pick with JD Vance, he even said that the vice presidential pick really doesn't matter that much. Now, it could have been in a campaign sense, but I do believe if they're actually implemented, if Trump actually ends up winning, JD Vance probably won't have a whole lot of work to do unless that work is implementing Project 2025, which is a whole beast. Now, I am surprised if this is the only debate. I am surprised that Kamala didn't talk more about Project 2025. I am surprised that she didn't try to link this a little bit more to him, because I've been on her side. I've been on both sides. And what's interesting is I thought every single policy that she's implemented, at least that she's labeled and listed out on her site, has a little bit at the bottom on Trump's thoughts and Project 2025, the antithesis of those policies and how they differ. So you can see the stark contrast. I'm really surprised that she didn't mention that a little bit more. We have Tim Walz speaking on ABC Live right now. I'm not sure if this is live or not. I don't have the sound on anymore, but it's interesting. I really thought that they were going to go a little bit more in that, because Project 2025, they've made this out to be the real boogeyman of this election. Now, I read all 900 pages of it, and let me tell you, it's not a fun read. And so I thought that they were going to push into that a little bit more, because some people don't know Project 2025. It is a big topic amongst focus groups across the country. However, across focus groups amongst the country, they only know the catchy little things that they see on TikTok. They see the little things that people send them. Tim Walz capitalized on that in his DNC speech, saying, clip this part and send it to your undecided relative. But to go a little bit further in this, Trump is always going to play the card of fear-mongering. That is exactly what he's going to do. You could play into that a little bit, because no matter what kind of fear-mongering you implement, his is always going to blow yours out of the water and make him look a little bit more manic than you. Now, Project 2025 can be a legitimately scary thing when it comes to Social Security, because if you want to call him out on his economic policy, because he's been for and against Social Security in the last 27 days. Same thing with abortion rights, especially if you want to call him out on Florida. I do think she could have been a little bit tougher. I think she should have called him out a little bit more. The moderators ended up stepping in, which I said during the stream, which was a little interesting, because just because we were going to fact check here. The CNN moderators during the Biden-Trump debate openly said that they weren't going to be in fact check, and they weren't going to call each other, the candidates, out on their. I'm sorry, I get distracted by JD Vance's face. He's being interviewed by John Carl right now. He's gonna praise Trump. We all know what he's gonna say. Oh yeah, Trump would just say 2025 has nothing to do with him. Is it worth bringing it up? I still think so, because I still think, even if Trump says that Project 2025 has nothing to do with him, Project 2025 is the foundational base of his conservative backing. So even if, and this is what I say, Project 2025, unfortunately, I believe is going to happen regardless. Maybe not 2025, but Project 2025 is meant for the next conservative president. And ultimately, once the Democrats become establishment, the trend has always been the same. It becomes outlier gets elected. Outlier becomes establishment. Establishment becomes old and makes way for the new outlier, which is why when Clinton lost, it followed the trend. It would have been strange had Clinton had won. Now, James Comey had a little bit to do with that, but at the same time, Clinton was a continuation of the Obama and Clinton administration. She still was the establishment, and that's exactly what Trump is trying to establish here. Trump is trying to establish Kamala as the establishment, the current administration, but it seemed before the debate happened, as soon as she ran, she became the underdog. And this debate and this election almost became a referendum on him, on his former administration. This is one of the first times in a long time that we've actually had two presidential candidates with experience both in the White House. This is, I say this is so overblown, but this actually is unprecedented. But unfortunately, Trump's own enemy is Trump. It's the two separate minds at the same time fighting to make words through the same mouth. It has always been the same way. This is why they wanted the mics to be muted. His own campaign wanted them to be muted because they knew exactly what he was going to do. And again, even with the mics muted, he still fed right into every little every little trap that she laid out for him. He did divert a little bit, but then he went right back on immigration, which again, as we've seen, does not sway moderates. Their biggest issue is the economy. If you want to talk about the economy, this is why I say talk about Project 2025, because Trump might just be a figurehead for the conservative movement of Project 2025. You want to talk about Social Security, you want to talk about healthcare, talking about how if you are going to be pro-drilling, the pro-drilling involves the part in Project 2025, which eliminates a lot of scientific protections for landmarks and national parks. That is where the American drilling is going to come, because that is the untouched land in America. Mind you, Biden, under the Biden, I guess you want to call it the Biden-Harris administration, we've done more offshore drilling than ever before. And offshore drilling, like I said, it's still American soil drilling. It's just off of our shore. We've done more than that, more of that to create a competitive market. Like I'm part of it, Jesus Christ. We as a country have done more of that. Now, renewable energy should come down. However, we had an opportunity to push that under the Trump administration. However, Trump decided to go with more manufacturing, like bolster companies like Carrier, blue collar manufacturing that ended up going to Mexico, that ended up going to Vietnam and the Philippines and China because they had a lower price point and they were more competitive of it. Meanwhile, China was bolstering up its intellectual property, which we could have really benefited from, but we chose to go to the Make America Great Again blue collar route. Now, we're trying to do that again. However, his tax cuts actually increased taxes for companies like GM. It's really hard when you have that and then you support a pro-union buster on X, if you could log on, to say that you are kind of pro, working class blue collar labor. It is really, really difficult. He had a chance to make the discussion. He didn't do it to the fullest. She, I think, could have done more, but I think ultimately she comes out of this with the win. If this is the only debate, I don't think either candidate come out better from it. Latest poll shows that Trump is leading her nationally by 1 point, still within the margin of error, but that just means that it's a guessing game up until November. If she can pull apart in 3 points, the idea is that she would need 3 points ahead in the popular vote to win the electoral college votes. So if she's up by 2 points, think in your head, she's actually down by 1 point because she needs the electoral college. Clinton won the popular vote, mind you, and she still lost. So think she needs to be up by 3 points in the popular vote to win the electoral college votes. That is the biggest thing. We're also seeing Trump talk about not winning or planting the seeds for not accepting the results of the election. He was given a chance to talk about how he so and so admitted defeat and then backtrack because he's incapable. And that's kind of that lack of sacrifice is not kind of what we need. And yes, I do agree. It is absolutely mind-numbing that it is this close. I embrace all 28% of our undecided electorate. It is our duty as influencers, as content creators, as people who are informed to say, okay, we have 28% of our brothers and our sisters are undecided. They don't know where to turn to. They are confused. They are willing to learn. I've listened to stories from people who, after canvassing, tell me that they're a lifelong Republican but they're torn. We have to remember, this is a lifestyle choice for them. This is a chance for them to be something different, and that scares them. A woman told her story of a lifelong Republican. She's in her mid-40s, but she's scared. She doesn't know where to turn because she doesn't like Trump and she's unsure about Kamala. So the only thing that would change her for Kamala and not be an undecided voter and just stay home and lose a vote is if Kamala talked about her policy, because this woman literally clutched her 2 young daughters for dear life, and a single tear rolled down her eye by saying, I am scared for the future of my daughters. And we know who she's referring to when that fear is stoked. She is scared for her daughters. The only thing that will help her is if she's informed. It is us, the people who are not so much undecided, that are the ones informed. Not so much to tip these people off over each side of the fence, but to show each other both sides of the yards, to see exactly where we stand, what we stand for, what these candidates stand for, and help them make the choice and realize that that choice is the right choice. To make sure to bring a sense of sacredness back to the rule of fact. Not so much the rule of law, but the rule of fact. The biggest way for authoritarian governments to disseminate fear and chaos into its enemies, eliminate the sanctity of a truth, of a single fact, of a single way to show that you can infiltrate people by infiltrating the minds of the electorate, by causing people, by paying influencers to disseminate lies about Russia or Ukraine, or to get people to not believe in the results of an election. That's the kind of things that Russia, that Iran, that North Korea desperately want to see from us, and we will not give into that. We are always going to be fact-based. Facts will determine our opinions every single time. If there is something that I don't agree with, but is a fact, I have no choice but to accept it. There is no 2 realities. There are 2 ways of thinking in this, but there is only one reality, and that is what is most important. I do appreciate the debate. I appreciate ABC, the moderators. I think in terms of policy, they did the best they could in the given circumstances, but I do think a second debate is necessary. I don't know exactly where that might be, maybe like BBC News or PBS or something. But the method, the format was great. I think that's exactly what they need to be doing. Mute the mics, don't mute the mics. It's really but anybody's game, but I appreciate what they did. I appreciate keep holding people's feet to the fire. I assume that they're probably going to be assumed to be a little bit more left leaning because they didn't call Kamala out. She didn't tell as rampant a lies as Trump did, but I assume that's kind of like how the narrative might shift. But again, I think they did a good job. I think both candidates came out and showed their true colors as much as they possibly could. We have to get rid of this, as Hoham is saying. We have to get rid of this notion that party affiliation breeds a sense of loyalty. I was always raised on one side, but I've always been a fan of comedy in its truest form. And the silencing of that, I was never really a fan of. Just because Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or AOC or Jamie Raskin changed their opinion on something, that doesn't mean I have to change my opinion. The same thing, Mitt Romney, McCain, or Marjorie Taylor Greene say something, that doesn't mean I automatically disagree with it. It depends on the context. We need to bring back that context. We need to reinforce the sanctity of the human fact. We need to reinstitute faith in institutions and fact checking, and understand that if something happens that we don't like, we need to accept it. Some of the candidates could benefit from that kind of lesson. I hope you guys had a great night. I hope you are at least a little bit tipsy or maybe buzzed and you're not driving home or anything. You're just in the comfort of your own home. I thank you guys. Keep coming back. We're going to keep having more of these. We're going to have more discussions with Thinker once he comes back from his job. He's going to be dead asleep until probably about 5 o'clock tomorrow night. Thank you guys so much. Leave a like, leave a comment, leave a tip. I appreciate everything. Every single penny, every cent goes straight back into the channel. I don't believe anybody won bingo, but keep in touch. We keep commenting. We'll have more games as we go along, and we will see exactly how how much free merch we can give out, because I like giving away free merch. It makes me happy. So thank you guys so much for watching this live stream of the 2024 presidential debate, the potentially only one addendum and edits maybe to come, depending on if they decide to keep going. Thank you guys so much. From one writer to another, stay creative. That was it.